Okay, I think we're on. So I'll call the Thursday, December 12th, Environmental Advisory, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the minutes.
January 9th.
The Thursday, January 9th, 2025 Environmental Advisory Committee meeting to order. First order of business, we have a lot of new members. I just kind of wanted to go around the table for the benefit of the group and introduce everybody. I'm Douglas Carr, Deputy City Administrator, the kind of lead staff person for the committee.
I'm Matt Sims, the zoning administrator.
Nicole, you want-
Oh, I'm sorry, Nicole Deneen, I'm the city clerk, I do the minutes.
Sean Hobson, new to the committee.
Todd Murphy, this is my second year on the committee.
So if you don't mind, Sean and Todd, as we kind of go around, if you don't mind kind of giving a point of just your frame of reference on environmental issues or your background, kind of what just for the benefit of the group to know what considerations you may be bringing to the table.
Sure. Well, you know, having lived on the island for almost 40 years, I just feel that this is my opportunity to be able to give back to the island. You know, always been very conscious about recycling, you know, how we can make the island a better place given the influx of visitors, permanent residents. I don't have any specific environmental experience, but just hope to bring my engagement and just assist where I can to make the island a better place.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so Todd Murphy, this will be year 2 for me on the Environmental Advisory Committee. I did serve on the, actually I was involved with the turtle team up in Bald Head Island, North Carolina previously, and then got involved with the team here with Mary Pringle and the local Isle of Palm, Sullivan's Island turtle team. I've been doing that for, I guess, 3 or 4 years now. I have a business background, technology background, so not really environmentalist by trade, but just something, you know, as Sean said, interested in, you know, a lot of the things that are important to our island, the cleanliness, the protecting the natural beauty of the island, and things like that are just what drives me and why I'm here.
I'm Laura Lovins, and I'm going into my second year now with the Environmental Advisory Committee. And I got involved right off the bat with Audubon in 2021 with the Shorebird Steward Program, because we had nesting shorebirds coming here from South America and nesting on our island. And then the next year, in 2022, I got onto the turtle team with Mary. And also that year, I completed my Master Naturalist, South Carolina Coastal Master Naturalist Training Program, which is through the Charleston County Parks Department. So I grew up in the Midwest, so this area was never on my, I mean, it was on my radar to someday live, but didn't grow up in this kind of habitat. So I've really tried to immerse myself, and I've always been tried to be environmentally conscious, and now that I live in this kind of a environment, I want to really help protect it for not just me, but for everyone else and for future generations that are going to be living here. So that's me.
I'm Lucia Spiota. This is technically my second year, and I'm on the student part. I go to Porter Goud, and I'm a junior. So I'm nearby, and I've grown up living on the island, and I'm glad to be a part of this and hope to be of some help.
Hey, I'm Katie Myers. I'm the city council liaison, I think is the right word. So I didn't realize when I got on this that I didn't actually participate. So I'm just here for the fun. But no, I love this committee. I wanted to be on it because I've always been a really big interest in the environment, and I think that it's our biggest resource out here on Isle of Palms, and just want to do everything that we can to try to protect it and help. And I love the ideas that we come up with, and I hope we get even more bigger ideas this year. I think it never hurts to ask. So I love hearing new things and having things to bring to council, because this is a great group to get ideas. And if we if I can go to council and say that, you know, environmental advisory is all on board for something, it's be pretty hard to argue against it, I think, so. Give you a
Katie's
win.
a good barometer for, you know, she's got a foot in each kind of chamber, so she's always a good barometer for, you know, what the will of council
Right.
may be, or, you know, so
Yeah.
it's
Will they, won't they?
valuable to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not.
Where's the money, where's, you know, where's
Yeah.
it not? So,
Yeah.
useful.
My name's Eric Sikora, new to the committee. I have a green energy background. I work for a solar and clean energy storage technology manufacturer based in California, but lived here since 2017. So just hoping to give back like everybody else here. Hopefully be able to leverage some of my experience in the green sector to contribute.
We have Cindy on the phone here in the middle of us. Hopefully Cindy can hear us okay.
I can. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, everybody
Yes.
can hear you well.
All right. Sorry I'm not there with you guys. I just joining the committee, so I'm very honored to be elected for the committee. I have a long history with the island. I'm a native Carolinian, born in Nashville, grew up in Greenville, Raleigh, but my family's had property on the island for over 40 years. So 3 generations. We were there, you know, I was basically under. My dad bought 2 lots after Hurricane Hugo for $10,000 each. And I just built a house on one of them, so I'm on Morgan Place, 43 Morgan Place. And I've held on to that lot for, 35 years. My background is finance, business management. I just retired from a 30-year career at my firm. So I have a lot of time to devote to this, and I am very interested in climate issues. I'm on the Duke Climate Commitment Committee for President Price at Duke to bring an interdisciplinary approach to climate, you know, through policy, finance, engineering, environmental science. And we do a lot of work in the Carolinas and globally to look at various climate issues. So that, you know, that's probably most relevant to this, but very excited to be on the committee.
Cindy, that's Duke Power or Duke University?
Duke University.
Okay.
What, Cindy, what's your last name?
Mars, M-A-R-R-S.
Okay.
Thank you all for that. And just before we get too much farther, I did just want to go through the committee's kind of stated purpose and goals, just as an orientation. 3 new members, and unfortunately didn't get to orient them too much prior to this meeting. So, and this is directly from the charter of the group. The purpose, City Council formed the Environmental Advisory Committee to advise City Council on matters of environmental impact, protections, conservation, and sustainability by exploring innovations, best practices, and data around changes. The committee aims to educate the community about environmental issues and city initiatives while promoting a sustainable lifestyle. The Environmental Advisory Committee may address matters as requested by City Council and its committees, and on its own take up issues and initiatives that fit within its mission with regular reporting to the council. Goals, number 1, protect the environment, endangered species, and natural resources. Number 2, reduce litter and pollution. Number 3, pursue energy conservation. Number 4, develop environmental messaging and branding to promote best practices. Next, support Isle of Palms as a strong environmental leader in South Carolina and a model for other coastal communities. And finally, develop and support partnerships with related community groups and stakeholders. That's that's kind of our purpose and goal, and I think the group in its fairly young life has managed to do a lot for the community to kind of work towards those goals, so very commendable. Next thing on the agenda is the nomination and election of chair and vice chair. And I'll just call for nominations. Once we're done with the nominations, we'll close that and take a vote. So first, nomination for chairperson.
I'd like to nominate Laura Levens, the last year's vice chair, to be the chair this year.
Okay.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any other nominations? With none, we'll close nominations. All those in favor of electing Laura Lovins chair signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. With that, Laura, I'll hand it over to you. Next
Okay.
order of business is nomination and election of vice chair.
Okay, so can I hear any nominations? I have a nomination for vice chair. I nominate Todd Murphy for vice chair.
I second.
I don't.
Yeah, she can't vote.
I don't think she can. She's not voting.
But thank you.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Sincere.
Okay. Any other nominations? With that, let's take a vote. Everybody who's in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Congratulations, Todd.
Condolences.
All right, then our next agenda item would be citizens' comments. Do we have any?
Do we need to approve the minutes first?
Oh, that's,
No, actually, this time it's minutes are after.
minutes are after the citizen comments.
Okay.
We didn't have anybody sign up for citizens' comments.
Okay, then now we can go over the approval. Did everyone get a chance to read the previous minutes?
I did. I saw one thing, Douglas, maybe keep me honest here. At the end of last meeting, did we talk about the goals for this year? And was that part of the meeting discussion, or was that something that was post-adjournment that we were just informally kind of talking about doing? Do you recall? Laura, do you remember?
I was not here, so I
Okay,
have to
okay.
abstain.
So that's the only thing that could be.
Discussion of goal
Of
setting
goals for
for this.
2025.
For this
Like
year.
there was some, I think,
Sandy?
Sandy wanted to leave behind, like, these were the things we had already sort of, kind of a master plan, like, we were thinking about for 2025. I don't remember if we talked about that during the meeting, or if that was after the meeting, just informally, but the reason I ask if it was during the meeting, it needs to be noted in the minutes, and
Any
then
recollection?
potentially attached to the minutes.
Were you here? You were here.
I mean, I was here, but I don't recall. I mean,
I
if it's
think that
not
was-
there, then that was a conversation
May
that
have
was
been
happening.
That's
I
after.
remember the, I remember the
Okay.
comments.
Yeah, then I think we're okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the meeting minutes are good as is, so I make a motion to approve the minutes for the December meeting.
Okay. And everyone in favor of approval,
Give a
say,
second.
oh,
Yes.
do I need a second? I'm
Yes.
sorry, I need a second. I'll second it.
And you were, okay. You guys weren't here, so.
Right.
Right, that's right. All right, so approval of the minutes, everyone who's in agreement, say aye.
Aye.
And I actually have to abstain because I was not here.
I think you
I-
can technically vote.
I read
Yes.
them, and
You
I,
technically vote,
okay,
Even if you weren't here.
Right.
Unless you have, so I think that they need a majority of the group
Correct.
to approve.
of the group, okay, then I,
Unless you have any reason not to vote aye, I would just vote aye.
aye.
Nicole's so good. She
Aye.
gets it
Aye.
right.
Okay.
but thank you.
All right. And next, presentations, we don't have any of those today. And then the next order would be old business, and wildlife would normally be Mary's role.
Yeah, we are short, I guess we should have said that with introductions. Mary Pringle is a member, we actually have two members not here today, Mary Pringle and
And Dane
Dane
Buckout.
Buckout.
And Dane, yeah,
And she, as Laura stated, she would usually give this.
she would
update.
normally give this update.
So Mary did text me and say there are no updates, so it's
Okay.
perfect.
Okay.
We're not going to miss anything.
Okay.
No
All right.
updates on the
Okay.
wildlife front.
All right, then, next old business item would be water quality.
Litter?
And we,
What
oh, I'm sorry, litter,
Litter.
excuse me, discussion of the lighting ordinance.
Okay?
And I think, Todd, you were sort of spearheading that, weren't you?
Yeah, Matt and I and Lucia pulled together some information. So December meeting, I sent it out post-packet, so if you guys got the packet, it would have been separate. This is an initiative we started last year, so I'll just kind of bring everybody up to speed. We did a little bit of research on light pollution in the Charleston County and specifically around Isle of Palms. And the trend analysis, Lucia did a really nice job of pulling this data together. Kind of shows a 4% year-over-year increase in the amount of light on the island. So there's a trend, towards, the development is producing more light. And so we kind of looked at, well, what could we do about that? And what are our neighboring communities doing about that? Matt and I had a conversation with Folly Beach. We tried to reach out to some of the folks up at Pawleys Island. We're not successful in having a meeting with them, but we did find there are some good bit of information, ordinances, guidelines, and things that other communities have done beyond what Isle of Palms has done to help remediate, the light pollution issue. So this document that I sent out, I won't go through all of it, but the first 3 pages it's sort of the problem statement. It kind of explains, what the potential risk is. It does highlight some of the things that our neighboring communities have done at the macro level. What we did since that meeting, starting on page 4 of this document, is we pulled together the kind of a summary or a paraphrase even of the ordinances of Folly Beach, Edisto Beach, Sullivan's Island, Kiowa Island, and then we recapped what Isle of Palms has in place today. And so when you look at the ordinances in a nutshell, the beachfront sea turtle specific ordinances are very consistent and they're pretty thorough. There's a lot of good protection for that aspect of the island community. But where you start to see some gaps is you look into the other like existing development beyond the beachfront. And by the way, let me make one comment on the beachfront. There's different definitions of beachfront. Some of the communities are using terms like visible from the beach. Others are using terms like row 1 or oceanfront in row 2. So there's a little bit of difference on what is considered beachfront or beach impacting on those ordinances, but the rules are very consistent, like what you can and can't do, and the objective in all cases is keeping the light off the beach. Okay. Where we get a little bit of difference and some opportunity for Isle of Palms is in the development beyond beachfront or beachfront impacting. And so newer existing residential development, we saw Kiowa and Sullivan's had some pretty interesting non-beachfront things, pretty simple, not terribly complex, but things like having shields over exterior lights, having exterior lights not go beyond the boundaries of the property, not creating glare, not creating sky glow, these different things that their ordinances are generally addressing. Folly Beach had some pretty specific building code requirements, and they did some things around the process of applying for a permit. Around the types of lighting, and they went as far as specifying the wattage, the lumens, the type of lighting, the type of structures that the lighting have to be in. So, again, a lot of good information here that we as a community could look at and either adopt or modify if it makes sense, to do so to meet the needs for the island. So, I'll let you guys take a read on this a little bit later. The last piece of this was the commercial and recreation district. And again, Kiowa and Sullivan's had some pretty good, succinct set of ordinances around what they wanted to be able to do around lighting. It kind of goes back to keep the lighting away from the beach, keep the lighting focused on the public, the recreation fields or the park or whatever it is, and not have overflow or spillover lighting. It's kind of the theme of the ordinances for those two. And then and Folly, as they did with the residential and the commercial side, had some a little bit more technical specifications about what you can or can't do. And then the last thing on the last page, it's kind of related. These were not lighting ordinances, but we also saw some things that helped with lighting, light pollution or light issues. Edisto Beach, they have landscaping ordinances, and one of the goals of those ordinances is to filter and reduce glare from artificial light sources. So I thought that was interesting. It wasn't a negative, like, don't do this with lights. It was a positive, and please do more of this with landscaping to try to help knock down that glare. So, again, just some really cool ideas that we got from the other communities that are in the exact same situation we are, beachfront, island, visitors, residents, all the same dynamics that we have here on the island. So I do think it makes sense. We've got, our kind of our little running joke is we got a lot of good protection for the sea turtles. Maybe some protection for the human beings would be beneficial as well. The residents and the visitors, that many thousands of visitors that come here and like to enjoy the skies and the beach and that sort of thing, and not have the light pollution just encroaching on that. Okay, so I think our next step would be to take a look at some of the ordinances, and there's summaries here. We've got all the details we've pulled from the publicly available ordinance documents, and maybe even come up with a set of recommendations for council. But I guess before we jump into that, I did want to ask, you guys know that you've got your pulse on the council, and talking to Douglas in the past about this, it seems like this is a little bit of could be a little bit of a tough topic, right, for some on council. So I kind of wanted to get an idea of what you think might be the best way to take a step forward here.
Having flashbacks to noise ordinances.
Yeah.
I think you guys did a wonderful job. I think this is a really, really well thought out, really reasonable, great first step. I think it's reasonable for us to be, you know, in keeping with the other neighboring communities. I just very recently have had neighbors complaining about a spotlight in an adjacent house that's shining into their living room, basically. I thought all those things about the noise ordinance.
Yeah.
And it failed. But maybe this will have better traction. I mean, I don't think it's not worth a try.
Yeah.
I just think we need to keep that in mind, that, you know, there are going to be the same people that don't want, you know, people telling them what to do on their own property. But, you know, when you start saying having the light not shining onto someone else's property,
Right.
That to me makes sense. And I think that if we did it in a reasoned sort of way, you know, I definitely think it's worth looking at. And
Yeah, and I would feel the same. I mean, I think from my perspective, the council is very agreeable to outreach, and they push outreach, education. I mean, it's in your purpose, it's in your goals.
Yeah.
And I think they're all about that, and there's no question about that. But I seem to always see a pullback when it's a new regulation.
Right.
And what seems to happen is the regulation is taken, and it's then, in my personal opinion, tortured a little bit, and examples of, well, what if I do this, and
Yeah.
you know, I could have a flashlight at this hour.
No more
and-
Christmas lights.
No more Christmas lights.
Right.
That kind of stuff starts happening,
Yeah.
and immediately you can kind of
I say that before
feel
anyone else does.
the air come out of the room, and it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't, you know, I guess I always would default to, is it something that we could get meaningful traction with education and outreach
Mhm.
first? Because I think we know that's always a home run, easy path forward, everybody kind of likes it, supportive of it, we can get resources for it. And I feel like the minute it triggers over to a new regulation,
Yeah.
it just kind of pulls the negative aspects out of the community that make a mess of it.
And maybe it is worth starting with the ask instead of the demand, you know, that
What would-
we teach people, you know, and
What would that look like? I mean, how would we go about educating? I mean, would this be pamphlets or something that would be created? I mean, I don't understand exactly how we would,
How you educate?
the entire community, yeah.
Yeah, I
How-
mean, and
how
it's
does
the
that
same, we
work?
also have the same question with a new regulation, you know, and we get that from the code enforcement, like, how would somebody,
how do you
you
know?
put this code in place, and how would that person have known we're showing them
Right.
to write them a ticket, and they've never
Right.
heard of the, so it's a valid question, and we struggle with it either path that we take. It's like, how do you get the word out?
So this,
Effectively.
on that one point, Folly Beach did have, because it's part of their permitting process, there was.
Permitting,
Folly Beach.
Yeah.
Folly Beach.
So there was, as part of your permit package, there was a exterior lighting plan document. Where are the lights going to be? How far are they going to be spaced? How high up? What kind of lights are they? So it
So
gave us.
maybe, is maybe new construction a
New construction, or
goal?
permitting was a way to, you know, sort of educate, or, you know, kind of real-time educate people, and then have the policy go into effect. The challenge then, and that's why you see their ordinances, new development, existing, I think they split them up intentionally.
Yeah.
So it still applies to the existing, but it was a little bit, in their words, you know, they waited for somebody to, you know, let them know. They didn't go
Yeah.
around driving around looking for people in violation. And so if somebody said, hey, we have an egregious problem, this person's got a spotlight, it's shining in my dining room 24/7, then the city could say, okay, let's go talk to them and tell them we have a new ordinance.
Yeah, I mean, that might be a good place to start too. I feel like new construction is always an easier,
Right.
because then it's a slow, you know, you're not expecting every person to
No,
comply on, you know, immediately.
I think
And
that's a good,
and you're
that
also
is a
not
good way to
expecting
start, I
people to
think.
change something that's already there.
Exactly,
Yeah.
It's easier to enforce.
Right.
exactly.
So would that be the expectation that a new, like if you have an existing offensive light, you can keep it?
Well, I mean, what Folly did is they put the same ordinance in, they just put a process in to deal with the permits. Anytime you
Yeah.
got a permit, now, we can use this as a way to educate people and enforce the policy. But they put an existing in as well. They had it as an existing, like, these are policies. And there's no grandfathering language, there's no.
Okay. So if you
gotta-
had, theoretically, if you had an offensive light
Yeah,
after this new code, you
Yeah.
would still need to retrofit to come into
right,
compliance.
right. But again, they said, we are not patrolling, looking at people's
Yeah.
lighting and saying, hey, you're in violation. We're waiting for somebody to say, this is a serious violation.
So it's more
Can I
citizen.
ask a quick question?
Sure.
Excuse
Sure.
me. Sorry. Because I just built a house in Wild Dunes, and they had pretty tight regulations on the type of lights, and they were shielded and could only light downward. And I'm on the marsh, I'm not on the beach, so, and it all had to go before the architectural review committee and be approved. But we did get that guidance of what was allowed and not allowed, and it seemed more like some of these other places, like Kiowa, and it had to be approved by the ARC. Do they have different regulations than the Isle of Palms generally?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the Wild Dunes ARC is, there's nothing like that outside of.
No, that's,
Yeah, outside of
yeah.
Wild Dunes.
Yeah, that's the difference, yeah.
But it was a good process. I mean, it was educational. They either entered their materials that gave us guidance on what we needed to do might be helpful as a guide.
Well, Todd and I both live in Wild Dunes, so we might be able to tap the
Yeah, I think it's still.
architectural committee.
I think it still kind of comes back to, the Folly Beach was very telling, the conversation with Folly Beach. They wanted to have the ordinance. They didn't want to be burdened with going around and monitoring, policing people. So the process they put in place is like, this is low-hanging fruit. If you come to us and say, I'm going to do work on our house, we can say, okay, great. Make sure you follow these guidelines around the height of the building, the way where your yard sits within your lot, and oh, by the way, where you put your lights. We could do it all at one time, so, yeah.
And I just had a question about the study. I mean, it was a very thorough document. But when it talks about, that like Isle of Palms is trending 4% year over year, and I have a finance background as well and operations. So how does that compare to the other islands? How are they trending? And are we, an outlier, or again, how do we compare?
I don't know. I don't know if I can go back and look at that. I don't know. We looked specifically at Isle of Palms using the data that was available from Charleston County, but I don't know that Kiowa, for example, or Edisto, if they have a similar trend. I don't know. It's a good question. We'll find out.
That is fascinating. That's coming from NASA's satellites. They're
Mm-hmm.
picking this stuff up.
Yep.
So,
One more comment.
Okay,
Sean's
go ahead.
question was a good question. I don't know that we have a major problem today. I think my concern is just with the amount of development we have going on across the island, that the potential for this to become a problem down the road is my concern.
Right.
So it's not so much unwinding what we've done as much as preventing what could be done, in my opinion.
So Todd, are you thinking that, in your mind, are you envisioning one of the communities as a good kind of model to look at? Do you feel like, I've heard you mention Folly, is that a good starting point in your mind, or?
Matt and I had a conversation with them. You were out of the room, Matt, when I talked about this, but I thought I think they found a good balance of trying to put in, protective ordinances, but not trying to be overly burdensome. The others have a sort of a lighter touch approach, or they just haven't addressed all the areas. I think Cindy mentioned being on the marsh. Kiowa's got provisions about being on the river as well as oceanfront. I think Folly had something about docks. It might have been at Kiowa. Was it
One of
Folly?
them did, yeah.
About having lighting on the docks and that it had to be facing down on the dock, not out onto the water. So just any of the natural habitats. I think the ocean became real obvious. Sea turtles, endangered species became real obvious that needed to happen. But I think the same concepts apply to any body of water, any green space where you're going to have wildlife. So the marsh and the rivers and lagoons and whatever other bodies of water and land all kind of fit into that same criteria. They're all habitats that are being disturbed. So I don't know. It just seems like Folly does have a pretty good balance or a pretty good starting point. I like Kiowa and Edisto. I thought they had some less technical, less detailed ordinances, so it wasn't quite as burdensome for the homeowner. So maybe a balance.
But I think there's less density there too, compared to Isle of Palms.
Which
and
one?
Kiowa.
Yeah.
The Kiowa, yes,
Kiowa.
yes, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
Well, and they also have the architectural, or is that included in their architectural review board? Because Kiowa's got that for everything. So there might
not
be,
sure, yeah.
there might be more restrictions that we're not seeing in ordinances because they're in the
Yeah.
architectural.
Like Waldoons.
Right, right.
But aren't there several, like, different neighborhoods in Kiowa? Like, many neighborhoods? And do they each have their own?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't think there's like a
I don't know how that
Waldoons.
would work, because
Maybe.
if that's something that they are addressing, when you're building a home,
Yeah,
Kiowa's obviously got a lot of restrictions on what
Right,
what you can build and
right.
what you can't build, so
yeah,
they might be hitting that from both sides,
it could be.
so.
Okay.
So what do you think our next steps on this should be, Todd?
Try to get a proposed and then actually sit down and go through it and see what people like and what they don't. I mean,
We could do
Because I
that.
think your biggest challenge is going to be enforcement. And through permitting, that's where you're going to really be able to.
Right.
yeah.
get
If we could,
upfront.
yeah, if we could at least ensure some kind of permitting guarantee on the types of light and directions, et cetera,
Mhm.
like you proposed, if we could get that at least. And then I think from there could be education just from word of mouth.
And through our local newspapers, like Island Vibes.
Right, yeah, right, writing an article to Island
Yes.
Vibe and Island Eye, to let people know.
And you also, if you just kind of take the pulse through the permitting side of things and then get a feel for what people actually think about this for going
So what would be,
broader.
what would be the process of being able to initiate some permitting restrictions?
It would have to be a code to be enforced.
Right,
So,
right.
there's, at the permitting office, we kind of have occasionally things like tarp your truck for litter, and that's an existing code. There'll be a flyer kind of on the, to just kind of give varying degrees of info. That's something that we do. Just here's information that pertains to construction vehicles. It's available at the office. Contractors are through the office frequently, so that's kind of on one end of the spectrum in terms of light, getting the words out. And then on the other end of the spectrum is the turtle lighting ordinance that is an ordinance. And, each set of plans that gets reviewed on the ocean front gets reviewed for that. It gets marked up for that. It gets inspected for that in the field
Right.
Those are kind of the two ends of the spectrum in terms of, the light mode with handing out information, and then a little bit of, they don't get into their building if they're on the ocean front with spotlights out to the beach.
Mhm.
So those are the kind of two ends of the spectrum. I do think, from my kind of standpoint, either one of those is okay. I do, and to Sean's point, when it starts getting out of new construction,
Yeah.
it'll be tough. And even, we deal with that with every facet of the code, that we review it, we scrutinize it, we inspect it, and then 8 months down the road, they do
Right.
something that wasn't authorized or wasn't approved, and
Right.
we're kind of then chasing down an issue with, and it, if you had a ton of those, it becomes challenging.
Right.
And Mary, you have, and I don't know if your perspective on, Mary clearly has a close eye on the turtle lighting ordinance.
I must say that since we have code enforcement officers now, it's gotten a lot better. Because before, we would just have to go knock on doors and people would say, well, I'm paying $15,000 for this house or more and I can do what I want. But now, since Officer Kowski started, he would even come to me and say, I've had complaints about this house. So I think the code enforcement officers do really improve the enforcement of things like that. But Douglas, what do we do about things like existing lights that have been changed to make them even brighter, which is, have you heard about Shipwatch? Someone told me that a resident at Shipwatch was very concerned because they put new outside lights on every single unit that are really bright now. And somebody on the Turtle team who lives in Wild Dunes was going to go check on that and see if she thought they were really bad lights. But I didn't know what would happen if somebody changes their lights.
Well, under the Turtle.
I mean,
Code,
that's right on Front
that's-
Beach.
Yeah, I mean, that building happens to be covered by an existing code, so it would be enforceable by the city.
But
But
the
I think-
degree of lighting is not in that code now about the beach
say how many.
turtle.
How many
lumens?
lumens?
Whatever.
No, it just says no lights shining on the beach, and that's pretty vague.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I haven't been out there. It's been so cold.
Yeah.
But I don't know what kind of, they put LEDs at each unit or what.
I had not heard that.
But I didn't know what happened if something changes.
And I guess that's to be determined, but to
Yeah.
the point, I mean, if one side of one row of buildings is patchy enforcement, and we're talking about potentially applying it to every side of every building on the island, it could get challenging, right?
Yeah, I like the idea of just having it be part of the permit process and, kind of evolving towards a
Yeah.
better situation, because eventually all these homes are going to have renovations done and have permits, and, at some point we'll have a, pretty comprehensive outcome.
Yeah,
But just, I mean,
the
we-
slow evolutionary kind of
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah.
See a,
Kind of
yeah,
looking-
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to see a proposed permit, light
some language around that. Okay.
for the light.
Yeah,
lighting.
Matt and I can, yeah. Okay, that's good. Thank
Okay.
you.
Cool, thank you.
Sorry, this took all that time.
No, that was good.
Okay. Then the next item is water quality, and I don't know if Doug he was
Doug-
talking about coming back in
Yeah, he actually
February.
reached out and said he would be here today.
Okay,
But,
because
Just-
I would absolutely need him to
Yeah.
decipher that
Yeah, I had a
39
hard time.
pages.
Yeah.
And what's actionable?
And
Yeah.
because I noticed, the only thing I noticed was the fecal matter, and there were about page 1, page 4, page 6, and page 8, where there were numbers that were, not less than what I think the norm is supposed to be. And I don't know what that means, or where those outfalls were located, so.
well, I think we're all in the same boat on that. And I think from what I understand from Doug is he was even in that boat. But I think Doug had planned to reach out to the county stormwater collectors that
Right.
read these types of data charts regularly.
Mhm.
Potentially, and Matt and I talked about contacting the Water Keepers group. They're in the business of reading these results regularly. And I think it would just make sense, and I think we've talked about just trying to get a layperson's explanation of what that data is showing us, and we can work on getting that back to the group.
Right.
He had mentioned DHEC as well. I didn't know
Yeah.
if that was
I said the county, I should have.
okay,
said
that's what you were
health.
talking about. Okay.
So can we try to get somebody for the next meeting, whether it be Doug or someone else who can translate?
Or
this
even
for us
somebody
and-
from the testing company to
Yeah.
come.
Yeah, GEL
translator?
themselves may
GEL.
have
Yeah.
a translator.
So,
Because I think it'd be really good to get this through this committee and then up to council.
yeah. Well, and this goes hand in hand with, this was it was the first phase of looking at the possibility of moving towards some kind of language about our septic systems, whether it be, inspections and/or, inspections, I think, was the first step. Again, little steps to move towards something a little bit bigger.
I like what Sean said, though. I'd love to hear what does it mean and what's actionable out of that, like based on what, especially if GEL's done this with other communities.
Right.
What are some low-hanging fruit for us? Because it's just a bunch of numbers on a bunch of pages
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
now.
Right, we have a data summary, but
Yeah.
I don't know what that
I
does.
We need-
I'm
we
not,
need-
I'm not a,
We need professional help.
I'm not a chemist or a biologist.
Translator.
Right.
So for the benefit of the group and the new folks especially, this effort kind of started, say, 15 years ago. The city hired GEL, a testing firm. They did a very similar process and they actually did it over a series of months under a grant. But they did this water collection project where they went to our outfalls, they collected water samples, they then went and tested those water samples to see what the stormwater making its way off the backside of the island included. Initially, that data, consistently, that data showed fecal coliform E. coli, and that kind of stopped the first phase of that project. And then there was a second phase that was actually, and there's a term for it, but they were basically testing the bacteria to DNA testing to figure out the source of that bacteria. So they went through an additional study and then they gave a presentation to the city that kind of ultimately concluded that at that time there was significant bacteria, but that the source of it was, and I don't know exactly the number, but kind of 95%-ish animal produced. So there was a lot of talk about that at the time, that if you were to tighten up the sewer system to be absolutely perfect, get rid of every septic system on the island, you would only be improving the water quality by 5% or so. So that kind of sat with people and like, well, maybe the push is not worth the result. And in my personal opinion, that study has kind of been put back in the city's face frequently when there is talk about the environmental need to expand the public sewer system. So it's not that it's caused a roadblock, but to some extent, I think it kind of has. So the purpose of, I think one of the goals of this effort was to do that again, kind of try to follow a similar process, do that again and see if the information still bears out to be the same. Are levels about the same, or have we seen, an increase in levels? If the levels are the same, is the makeup of the source of the bacteria the same? In other words, is it still kind of 95% animal? So this was really the first step in that process. We got the numbers back, and it's showing some off-the-chart numbers, which we kind of thought it probably would, and it did. But beyond that, we don't have a lot of insight into what exactly the numbers mean. So I think that's the next step, is get a translator, as we've talked about. But that's kind of for the benefit of the group. That's where we are in the process, and that's kind of the goal of this operation.
Well, and I think it'd also be helpful with their samples for them to have a map to show where those samples are coming from, so we know what areas. Like they have SW2, what is that?
There is some way to correlate that. And maybe I didn't put it on. the
Doug's
packet.
kind of, this is what Doug distributed earlier today. And that might
Yes.
clear it
So
up a
we
little
have-
bit.
Yeah, we
I
do
can
have
send
that,
it.
yeah. And Doug would not have been on the,
Yeah.
so they have not seen that.
You just sent that this morning, I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
That email this morning said he'd be here today?
I think so. I can't.
Okay. So we will continue to kind of get the answers to what those numbers mean and continue to work on that. And as Laura said, I mean, the end goal would be to, you know, and I think that we all have kind of seen that with septic systems, it may or may not be a problem now, but I think we all kind of can see that left unchecked, if it's not already a problem, it's gonna lead to
And-
some level of problem.
And in talking with, just a little sidebar, and I won't belabor this, but in talking with Chris Jordan over at the water company, he feels that there is a change in public sentiment regarding more information gathering on the septic systems, because people are seeing our water issues as far as flooding, and there's more of them happening now than there were 15 years ago. And I think he feels that people are starting to talk more about, you know, wow, you know, this is not good. So I'm not saying it's going to be a total turnaround, but I think we're starting to get over a bit of that hump from 15 years ago.
We mentioned the awareness campaign approach. I wonder if one of the outfalls from this study would be if we can actually trace the fecal matter. Is it pets or is it deer and coyote? You know, like if there's some way to distinguish that, because I know I see people burying their dogs' mess on the beach. They bury it, and I've talked to them. I say, why are you burying it? We have bags, you know, to throw it away. They say, oh, well, just bury it, it just decomposes. It's fine. I'm like, well, now it's in your drinking water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, that's what you're drinking now.
Well-
So I don't think people realize, make that connection.
You have
There
to
was
do
the
DNA sampling
DNA
on the
sampling.
I
feces
know.
to see what they've
That's-
eaten.
that's
Yeah.
what-
That's
yeah.
what they do with birds.
That's what they do
in
with the
diet
bird.
studies,
Mm.
yeah, see what kind of bugs they're eating, so it'd be a different diet from dog food to
Yeah,
what coyotes eat,
yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, I don't know if there's some kind of a campaign that would help with this, in addition to trying to do some things.
Yeah, I do know a lot of after the last round, there was a lot of, to your point, that, you know, a dog kennel on the back of the yard that's right next to a ditch, and they think they're doing the right thing by
Yeah.
spraying it all, you know, cleaning it all right into the ditch. To
Right.
me,
Oh,
you know, there's
Yeah.
a lot there to be done,
Yep.
just educating folks.
But I think this report with the, you know, facts and, you know, an interpreter with those facts could be more impactful than just saying, it's bad, don't do it, you know?
So I will put on my list of things to do for this topic to circulate I think it's 15-year-old GEL study, just a PowerPoint presentation. Very simple at the end of the day, but it took a lot of work, a lot of effort to get to that final study. So I'll circulate that as kind of a starting point for this project, and then we will continue to work to find a translator for what we have so far.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then the next item under water quality was updating on any city engagement with regards to the federal lobbyist to find funding for infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera.
So this item specifically is on, will be on the council workshop meeting for Tuesday night.
Great.
We do know that at least the mayor, if not other members of council, have been meeting with Chris Jordan and the Water and Sewer Commission about this idea of sharing,
Mhm.
possibly sharing a lobbyist. At the last Water and Sewer Commission meeting, their commission approved Chris engaging a lobbyist. They haven't seen a dollar amount yet, so
Right.
they didn't authorize a certain dollar amount, but Chris just asked, is this something you all are interested in us pursuing, and they were, so everybody's kind of marching in that direction. There will be, once the idea is kind of bought into, which I don't think there's really an uphill battle there, the experience with the state lobbyists has been, you know, you pay them X, you receive back 10X.
10X,
So it's kind
yeah.
of made a lot of sense at the state level, and I think the sentiment is that the same would happen at the federal level. So I don't anticipate any real issues. It would just be the process of who to select and who to engage, and there will be a process to do that. So
You do
it's-
like RFPs or
Yes.
RFQs? Okay.
yeah. Doesn't have to be a competitive, this happens to be a service that's not bound by a competitive process. But it's the typical process. So this is on the city council's kind of work list, and I'll just continue to update as they make progress on this.
Well, you've made me very happy. This was one of my pet projects from last year. So I'm happy to hear that there's some good movement forward. And then the final item under old business is climate action, and it's a discussion on Dominion tree trimming. And I know, I read the notes from the last meeting, which I couldn't attend, so there's been as of then, there were 120 trees that had been taken down, and do you know if there's an
I don't have the
update?
exact count. We hear from them bi-weekly, and I think it's in the vicinity, they're approaching completion. They were kind of approaching 200 2 weeks ago. We're aware there's been a little bit of a lag between them cutting the trees down and the trees being removed. So we are kind of coordinating with them when that happens, and they'll forget one. So we think that process is just about wrapped up for this first, whatever that first category of trees to go, categories.
It was category 1.
So we think it's about complete.
And what is that arrangement? When they cut the tree down, are they also obligated to remove the stump?
They do not. No, they cut it off as close to the ground as they can, and then that's it.
And has there been any, have any of the citizens who were concerned that the tree truly wasn't in a category 1 position, have they had any luck with talking with Dominion? And did Dominion meet with the city to explore options to have citizen input on some of the trees that were in question?
So Dominion has always been very agreeable to meeting on site with owners.
Mhm.
We have facilitated a number of those meetings. I am unaware of any owner that has successfully convinced Dominion that their classification was wrong. I don't know, we actually have a resident right next door who requested that meeting, and the last I've heard, they haven't been able to successfully hold that meeting. So I know that they've had a number of meetings. I would say that we're aware of probably less than 5. And I'm unaware, I think we usually get back the note. They were very cordial. They explained the classifications to us, but they're going to continue. Their plan is to continue as they had planned.
And did they give any indication as to what the time frame is between the category 1 and now the category 2, which are not currently necessarily in harm's way, so to speak? Have they given us any indication?
Like how quickly they grow between?
No, I know how quickly they grow. It's like about an inch a year. But
Yeah.
what I'm wondering is, have they given you any indication, like when they're going to come back and say to council, okay, now we need to go forward with the next 200? Because I think there were 5.
Category 2.
Yeah, with the category 2s,
I
yeah.
don't know that I've heard their intention is to go. I think the
It's their
category.
next cycle.
Category 2,
So they're,
That would be 5 years.
Yeah, they're on a 5.
They're on a 5-year,
but they would only be taken out if they go from a
Right.
category 2 to a category
Or
1.
one,
in
right.
that
Yeah,
cycle.
they're basically just in a wait and see.
So they might reevaluate a certain tree and take it off the list?
No, it just
No,
wouldn't
it
be.
might not
remain-
grow
It might
into a 1.
stay.
It might stay in
It
a
would
2
stay in a
for
2.
10
For-
years.
Oh,
yeah,
However long.
yeah.
Is there any precedence to trimming a tree so it goes from a category 1 to a category 2 rather than just cutting it off?
So we
entirely?
actually had that conversation because it does have to do with how close the outer fronds are to a line. And we kind of said, well, somebody was very clever, could they kind of be periodically pruning right before you classify it and successfully keep it from being placed as a 2 or as a 1? And their response was that is possible, but that there should not be a clear, and there should not be an OSHA compliant tree trimmer could not be working that closely and be in compliance with the OSHA standards. So that while it theoretically was possible, it wouldn't meet their OSHA standard. So they advised us to not publicly suggest that people start pruning their trees back to get them
And get electrocuted.
and get them
Right.
electrocuted. So we did kind of talk through that, and it did sound to me like there was a little bit of, you could maybe get it down classified, but they might argue it'd be unsafe to do that.
What about going from a 2 to nothing? I don't know if there's a 3. I mean, a
There
1.
is.
If you're trimming a 2, a 1 down to a 2, you got to be really close. But
If you're in a 2 to go to nothing?
yeah,
Like-
and then you're further away. I mean, is there
Like to preemptively trim
Mhm.
in compliance with OSHA standards
Mhm.
as much as possible to keep it out of becoming,
I think palm tree, I think it's because these are palm trees.
Yeah.
And they grow straight up unless some weird thing happens and they grow to the side. I mean, I just, that's the problem.
It's not like it's an oak tree.
Right, they're gonna just
Yeah,
keep,
kind of.
they're gonna keep growing straight up, whether we like it or not.
Do we know what percentage of trees that are cut are palms versus oaks or other trees?
well, this is entirely.
This is entirely palm.
This is
This was
all
entirely
Because
palms, yeah.
this is like, they did the oaks a couple,
Yeah, different
Couple years
pruning.
whenever that
Yeah,
was.
yeah, yeah.
Different
Rec-
pruning
Fairly
all the
recently.
oaks.
Yeah. Yeah.
The palms were a new thing.
And also, to bring you up to speed too, is one of the conversations we had was about the city being able to move, and it takes money, but to move forward on a path towards bringing the power lines underground.
Yeah.
And maybe, and not maybe, but we talked about a reorientation of prioritization of streets where, like, the next level, number 2 trees are located to try and get lines underground before the next 5-year cycle or 6-year cycle comes around. And there's one project that's been completed, and then the other one, which was started on 41st, which was a little bit more than the city could, it was a little bit more than they bid off a little bit more than they could chew, so to speak. Am I correct in that
Yes,
statement?
Yeah, and I don't know if this got
So where-
reported, and I don't know if the two are related really at all, but the Public Facilities Subcommittee of City Council has requested that the non-standard agreement side of Dominion, so this is the side of Dominion that works on these undergrounding projects, and again, kind of for the benefit of the group, there is a fund that Dominion captures for the purpose of undergrounding lines. They hold that money as matching money for city projects. After 5 years, that money, if it hasn't been used, it rolls out of the fund. So there's this kind of use it or lose it mentality. And the city has always had a kind of a priority list of the next 4, 5, 6 projects that they have on their queue, and they kind of roll up to the top as other ones get completed. I think that list has always been a priority of high visual impact, like an intersection. This is a key intersection. It's a gateway to the community. The Public Facilities Committee has asked, instead of paying to underground power lines, could we use that same bucket of money to fund an undergrounding master plan that would allow the city to prioritize? Right now, we're prioritizing aesthetics. Well, what if we wanted to prioritize service, kind of stability of service based on trees? So kind of give a different grading category for different parts, different considerations of trees. We've met with Dominion. Dominion's agreeable to using the funding for doing that, and that will be, they are on that committee's February agenda to kind of talk about how to do that, their willingness to do that. And it would give the city a very useful kind of tool in creating that list. If we get to
Okay.
a time where, the funding is gonna roll off, but we could shimmy 4 little projects up there to use some of that funding that's about to roll off and get some done, it would be a very useful tool for us. So that is with the city council, and they're working through that.
Good.
You'd mentioned last meeting that the pace that we're on, it would take about 100 years to get the entire island underground.
I don't know that was,
It's-
I didn't use
Not scientific.
actuarial tables to figure that out.
Okay.
It was a
Rough.
long time.
It was a thumb in the air.
I
But-
could probably do it with my own little shovel.
Yeah.
So I was curious, though, if we did this study, do you, in more efficient use of those funds,
Right.
is that in your, using the same type of math, cocktail
Goes
napkin
to
math?
50 years.
50 years, okay.
See that?
Woo! But it's just,
I didn't
it's,
know.
I mean, the big shift is to start to think about it, and ironically, we talked about this before the palm trees even became a thing, and it was more, after a storm of, would it make more sense to underground these lines so that they're not getting hit by tree limbs, which Dominion is, as much as we hate it, they are doing this so that we don't lose power. And so kind of now with the tree thing has kind of brought this, some needed attention from the community. And so now there is that added desire to, underground them away from trees to save the tree and to save people's power. And
Yeah.
so maybe we'll end up with a much better plan.
Well, we've also had issues with the transformers too.
Right.
Going down.
On the ground?
Um,
The ground
off
level ones? Or the,
Up,
oh, yeah.
like around 30th and 31st.
Yeah.
These have gone down several times now.
And I think that's one of the hot spots that people,
Would you mind if I know I'm not a part of the committee, but I have some information that I could share as a former member of city council who.
Does
helped-
every-
would it be
Is
okay?
everybody okay with Susan
Just to
weighing
say,
in?
I was on the committee that helped select the projects that are on the list right now. And we actually, wasn't really as much aesthetics as just functionality, like what improvements would be the best bang for your buck, kind of, which would, help facilitate more electric power usage, that kind of thing, protect that. That was more of our guide, but we did not look at trees as a factor. But I think the bigger concern has been too that Dominion's been a holdup in getting the projects accomplished. They haven't had the staff available to do the projects, and so then we're losing money that could have, we're trying to capture that's rolling off, and it's because Dominion is not able to provide the staff to get the projects done.
Yeah, that's accurate. I mean,
Yeah,
they do not seem red hot to underground. I think that 15 years ago, I think they saw this as a real asset to the utility provider as in terms of it's easier, it's less likely to be impacted. I think that mentality has shifted. I think they recognize, and we've heard them say, when it's overhead, we drive down the street, we can see instantly the problem. When it's underground, it's 50% less likely to be impacted, but it's 200% more challenging to fix it. So I don't know if that's, I just get the sense that they don't put it as a priority, don't dedicate
right.
resources to doing it. They're kind of like, if you really push it, we'll go at the 100-year pace.
Yeah.
But there is a little bit of that kind of pushing uphill feeling with these projects.
okay. Well, I think that's something that we need to keep in the forefront with our list to know where things go, especially if they're coming back in February to talk with council.
Keep the group
Appraised.
informed about
Okay.
how that process works out.
Wonderful. Okay, Under new business, we have a review of the EAC accomplishment list, and I didn't
Laura, that
see-
is from the last agenda.
That's what I thought.
And I think we contemplated this kind of idea of goal setting for the future.
Okay,
Not looking at the last year's list, because that's a holdover.
right. Well, in that light, I'd like to ask the new committee members to think about which bucket of work you would like to concentrate on. You know, if it's water quality or the city's habitat and wildlife, advocacy and leadership in climate action, and
Litter.
litter.
So
And-
I think we have 2 openings on water.
Okay, yeah, because Doug is
Doug,
gone.
Belvin were water.
Okay.
Or no, Belvin would have been,
Climate action.
Climate
No,
action.
he was climate action.
that's right. Where was Sandy?
Litter.
Litter.
And I was water quality, so I'm still.
I don't know where Dane, what was Dane doing?
Sorry,
Dane?
Dane helped us with the
was gonna say litter, I guess,
composting
too.
and
It's
litter.
composting,
Yes, I
yeah.
think litter,
So 1 on litter, and Dana's still part of the group.
still part of the group.
So 1 on litter, 1 on water, 1 on climate action.
And you don't have to, like, unless you know right now exactly what you want to do. But if you want to think about it, and then what I'd like to do is get your contact information.
Sure.
And we can chat, okay?
Yeah.
Great. After the meeting's over.
I don't know if it's new business or old business, Laura, but can I?
We have miscellaneous business,
Okay.
which is the next meeting, but we could probably add something in.
We had initiatives that we were talking about last year that are not listed. I just wanted to, I think they're technically old business, but one of them that Susan Hill-Smith had brought up was, and Sandy was leading, was around the trash cans on the beach.
Yes,
So we need somebody to kind of take point on that
okay.
going forward, right?
Well, so that one kind of is through the committee, and I would say up into council's.
Okay.
um,
So there's no further action required at this time?
I don't think so.
For the
That
committee?
also is going to be Robert.
Is that going to be,
Yeah, that'll be
Yes, Sarah.
discussed
On the Tuesday workshop?
Yes, at the workshop.
Okay, perfect.
okay,
And then there was one more like that. Actually, it's probably just more of an update. It was the solar panels and the grant that we got. And do we have work scheduled at this point, or?
It's been a lot of getting
Stuff
documents
signed,
straight.
Yeah.
and
Still in
I-
the permitting, I think, side of it, right? With Dominion, or getting the
Getting
interconnection permission, yeah.
Okay.
We have Eric on board now, who probably just sailed that way through. And then-
Permission to operate, so it's your.
Yes, to
what-
connect to the, interconnect, yeah.
So there are
Sorry.
systems installed?
Not yet, no.
no,
I mean, well, permission to operate you would get after the system's been installed.
So we're getting some kind of stuff,
Yeah, but
I
there's a
think it's,
lot
I think it's
of.
permission.
some kind of
for-
permitting, yeah.
I think it's permission to tie into their public system.
Yeah, sorry, yeah,
This is in the permitting
Yeah.
process.
Correct, yeah.
We're working through it.
But there's not anything that this committee needs to do
No.
at this point.
That
It's all in.
contractor has been selected.
Okay.
They're in the kind of infancy of getting the project off the ground.
Okay.
Literally over there, so.
Okay, perfect.
Under miscellaneous, could we get a quick update on the Corps of Engineers project and the Shoal project up by Beechwood
Yeah,
East?
sure.
I saw on
Is that on the list?
No.
Channel 2 had a reporter on the beach saying that the Corps of Engineers would be finished by mid-February, and I laughed. I thought, who told her
start by
that? Who
mid-February.
told her that?
Whatever it is.
She said they'd be done with the project. Maybe she misunderstood.
clearly she did.
Where'd she get her?
You can't believe what you hear, but I just
Better-
wondered what y'all
Check
knew.
your sources.
Yeah, you wanna,
There was a couple others.
you wanna keep going and then I'll.
Oh, I'm
That's okay.
sorry. Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt. I
No,
thought you
no
were
worries.
done.
My notes are all over the place. Another topic that was brought up last meeting, and it was referenced in the minutes, was the concept of replacing fireworks with drones.
Oh, yes.
So if that's something we want to continue to work on, somebody needs to take point on that on this committee. And then the last one was our citizens' comments, that I missed the meeting, but Mr. Redford was proposing to change the tree ordinance, I guess. I don't know if that's one, if that's dead, or if that's something that we need to continue to have a conversation about. But those were just two other items that are not on the agenda. I'm not sure if they should continue to be on the agenda.
So,
On the fireworks with drones, I don't know if you guys saw what happened in Orlando New Year's Eve, where they fell out of the sky and it almost killed a kid. He had to have emergency surgery. So there's some experience out there that's not very positive.
Okay.
What happened on Folly
And
Beach,
Folly
too?
Beach, they had to shut it down right after they started,
Yeah.
and I was worried that that would make people
so
discouraged.
I've had some
Yeah.
conversations with Susan, who was kind of presenting that to the group.
Right.
We talked a little bit about the fact that the city has already received bids for the upcoming July fireworks show, and to kind of, I don't think there's realistically time for this group to kind of
Change their
intercept
course.
the course for 4th of July coming up. I think kind of especially given the recent experience, I guess it would be, even if there were time, it'd probably be an uphill battle.
Yep.
So, and we had discussed Susan coming back to the group after this meeting, so maybe in February, Susan, if you're agreeable to, and potentially looking at maybe like a way to kind of introduce some alternatives, maybe at smaller, not right off the bat at 4th of July, to kind of get community buy-in is I guess, a thought that we
Mhm.
discussed. But I think that'll be on, I think it'll be on the February agenda for you all through Susan and a presentation at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
The other. what
The
was-
tree.
The tree, so the tree, there was also a similar appeal that happened to you all,
Yes.
happened to council. I would say that there just hasn't seemed to be an initiative to take, the request that was being made was to not protect pecan trees.
Mm-hmm.
We have a particular owner who doesn't believe they should be protected. I think from my personal standpoint, there just hasn't been anybody kind of willing to take that torch and run further
Right.
with it.
Right.
So I consider it dead.
So when we have topics like that, this is more of a committee question, but when we have a topic like that and it comes to committee, do we need to formally vote and say we are not going to spend any more cycles on that, or?
It would be the inverse. If you want if somebody kind of wants to
Okay,
champion a
it's gotta
project
be
through, you would
proactive.
kind of talk about putting it onto a future agenda, and the group would need to
Okay.
take it forward. But if it kind of just comes in passing and nothing really happens of it, they kind of die in committee.
Okay. Thank you. That's it for my list.
Mary,
Update on the.
Yeah, Army Corps project. So they, as you all will recall, they started on Sullivan's Island. They were pulling the sand out of the, what I call spoils area. They have another name, but putting that on the Sullivan's Island side first. They have, I would say, completed 95% of the work on Sullivan's Island. They have now shifted their operations to the Breach Inlet side. We've been in coordination with them in terms of getting set up on the Isle of Palm side. Their latest time estimate to us is that they would start around the end of January. I'll let you interpret that any which way you can.
Because at one time it was mid-January, they said.
Was that
Well,
24 or 25?
Yeah, it was
That was
surprisingly-
24.
Yeah,
Yeah,
actually.
That was
Sorry.
24.
That was not.
So
quite
it's
as funny as-
slid
Yeah.
easily a year, I would think.
Yeah.
So you kind of.
I'm just thinking about turtle nesting, and is it going to go into
Yeah.
May?
I really do think that, I mean, they are moving now. I mean, I hate-
Starting
I
at
hesi-
9th and going to 2nd.
I hesitate
now-
to say that, but I think they should be good. I think we should be good.
No way.
No way.
No way.
We
what?
won't be done by May?
No way.
So then is there consideration for that then to?
They have to
appoint the
stop.
turtles?
So-
Well,
So-
they are required, if they do overnight, they are required to pay monitors all night long, to monitor all night long. Turtle Team does not do that, but we still worry that that area won't be, that was the most used section, Breach Inlet area, up to maybe Fifth Avenue last year for nesting, and I just wondered how it was going to impact nesting this year, if they're still out there with pipes and stuff, you know.
Yeah, they have, so they've actually added a new component of a project. So it was just dredging the material out of the spoil site. They're now trying to interject a project in the middle between shifting from Sullivan's to Isle of Palms. They're adding a project of also dredging the intercoastal waterway. So they're setting their
What?
equipment off of the spoils and into the waterway as kind of an emergency lowering, deepening of the intercoastal.
Right at Breach Inlet or the whole thing?
Right at the bridge.
Across
It's
the
right at the
bridge?
connector bridge, isn't
At
it?
the intercoastal.
At the
Yeah, so-
intercoastal.
Okay,
So
up
if you
here.
were to
Yeah.
look up Breach Inlet to the intercoastal, so the spoils islands are on this side of the
Yeah.
intercoastal, so they're going on the back side of the spoils island. So they're increasing the amount of work that they're doing, which is, the good side of that is it's about 50,000 additional cubic yards of sand that we weren't planning on getting,
Mhm.
and that's coming to the Isle of Palms beach side. So there's a good side of that, but it's adding an additional
That prolongs
project.
the project.
It's going to prolong the
Yeah,
project.
yeah.
There-
And then what about the permits that they're getting for the shoal work up at?
So we
Beechwood?
think, and we were told by OCRM that they expected right around the new year to be issued, that the city would be issued permits.
Mhm.
So we're still waiting for permits to do that shoal work.
Mhm.
There's a condition as part of that permit that requires that the shoal be, and I think it's 200 feet, within 200 feet of the shoreline before we can go get it. So
Mhm.
even though we're waiting on a permit, Mother Nature hasn't moved the shoal quite close enough yet that we could get it anyway. So even if we had permits, we couldn't.
Yeah, I heard Stephen talk about that
Yeah, we
at the
couldn't
last
go
meeting.
get it anyway.
Yeah.
Our kind of best guess is that if we were to get the permit any day now,
Mhm.
which we think we could,
Mhm.
we could, we'll have to get pricing, we'll have to get bids, we'll have to go through a process
Mhm.
of getting the work approved. Large percentage of that project would be paid for by the Wild Dunes Community Association, but they have to approve their portion. So some pieces would have to fall into place for this to happen, but we think that's possible if we got the permits any day. We think that's possible in sometime February. But
That would
again,
be
a lot of things would have to happen between now and then.
When you said-
including moving the shoal naturally, moving closer.
Did you say 200 yards or 200 feet for the shoal?
200 feet,
Okay.
within 200.
Well, I'll tell you, I was out walking like 2 weeks ago and at low tide, and people were walking from the
Yeah,
beach
that's happening now.
to the shoal, right in front of Beechwood East. And that's the first time I've seen that, where they could
Yeah, that's-
actually walk.
That's been a few months of that.
Really?
People
Okay,
doing
I haven't,
it.
because of the
Of course, it
weather.
starts rescue calls and everything else.
Yeah.
Not close enough yet.
Of course, naturally, the turtles want to nest there, too. They love Beechwood East. They were climbing up on
Yeah, the
on the
rocks.
scraped berm, right up to people's porches and nesting right there. We had to move all
Persistence,
those
good.
nests. Yeah, it's crazy. They don't get the memo.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I think then that is, the next meeting date would set for 4 o'clock on Thursday, February the 13th. And with that,
That's generally good with the new members, the
Is that-
second
yeah, is that
Thursday
good?
before this works?
Cindy, are
Cindy,
you,
that-
you okay with that?
You said the 13th?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, good.
Okay. Then I want to consider the meeting adjourned. Can I have a second?
I second.